Welcome back. Former President Obama weighing in on the assassination of Charlie Kirk, calling the murder horrific and a tragedy, and accusing President Trump and his administration of fueling political division. Watch.
When I hear not just our current president, but his aides, who have a history of calling political opponents vermin, enemies, who need to be targeted, that speaks to a broader problem.
Broader problem? Let me be clear. Barack Obama conveniently failing to call out the left's assassination culture and the Democrats' obsession with calling Republicans Hitler.
Do you think we throw around Nazi too often?
Probably, but also I think it's really important people know their history.
Do you think that that's contributed to this, or are those critics wrong?
They're absolutely wrong. There should not be anyone that faces consequences because they actually know history.
We cannot allow this heinous murder to be exploited as an excuse for the advance of authoritarian rule.
All right, so Brian, I want to go to you about President Obama. He is calling out President Trump for saying that some in his administration have used terms like vermin and enemies, but I think I remember people in the Obama and Biden administrations using very pointed, cruel language directed right at President Trump.
Deplorable when you talk about targeted.
Irredeemable, Nazi.
Irredeemable, Nazi. And Barack Obama, I always look at him as when he became an ex-president, or I'm used to ex-presidents, acting above it all. You know, we're used to seeing H.W. Bush and Clinton going and helping out people after they get hit by a tidal wave or something horrific. They just came together. They stopped talking politics. Gerald Ford and Jimmy Carter. They just become above it all, almost statesmen. I don't want to get into that. If you go up to George W. Bush now, you don't even know if he's Republican or Democrat. He won't even talk about it. Barack Obama's become more political. He has not left Washington. Even though he hasn't had the job in 6-7 years, or a job, he's probably got $200,000 or $300,000 to sit down and talk to somebody just now over in Erie, Pennsylvania. I expected him to have lofty, grandiose views and thinks of things he could have done better. Instead, he's got more in the mud, more in the weeds, and he's got to say to himself, what did I actually accomplish? Because it's all being undone. I'll bring it to the White House response. Barack Obama is the architect of the modern political division in America, famously for demeaning millions of patriotic Americans who opposed his liberal agenda as bitter for clinging to their guns and religion. You'd have to say, even though his rhetoric is great and his talent is fantastic, we were never as divided as we were when he was president, and he wants to make sure we never forget it.
I mean, obviously, we need to learn from, internalize, and somehow grow from this moment, Harold, which at this point feels a little impossible, but we have to come together and we have to do it. Was the country more or less politically divided at the end of President Obama's term?
So I think every president, I'm going to just answer your question this way. I think it's relative probably, but I think every president is an answer to the previous president. And first term for President Trump came after President Obama's presidency, and then President Biden came after the first term of President Trump's presidency. So you can kind of see the continuum.
Wait, let me write this down.
J.K. Rowling, who
Bob Lemon replaced Billy Martin.
Every president's a response to the previous president. My friend Greg Constant is right to quote J.K. Rowling, and I agree a lot with what she said. She said something I thought was so important. She said, "Words are not violence. When you pretend that views that oppose your own are violence, you're justifying the use of actual violence towards the speaker." President Obama, I thought, was trying to say that in the first part of that sit down he had. And then he said the things he said about President Trump. Now, I think two things can be right at once. I think timing is important. I think as we find ourselves at this moment, I wish that President Obama had said all of this right after and said to Democrats and Republicans, particularly Democrats, this is horrible. This is an affront to our country and to what we stand for. He is still the biggest, if not the biggest, one of the two biggest voices in our party. I'm glad he finally said some words there. As we sit here today, I do, in my lifetime, and you've worked for a president, Kayleigh, I've not. I don't remember a time when the president, right after a tragedy, didn't say something really trying to envelop and to bring the country together. Now, President Trump, I give him the benefit of the doubt because Charlie was a great pal of his. He considered him another son of the way that it's been described. So the personal pain had to be so gripping. But as time went on, I thought President Trump has gotten better in terms of his language and bringing us together. The person that brought us together the most was this governor out there in Utah, who right away said, look, we didn't riot out here. We didn't burn anything out here. People out here were upset. We are angry, and we want to do everything we possibly can to bring justice to this situation. That's what we need national voices doing, and I hope that more Democrats, particularly Democrats, are doing that over the next several days.
No, he absolutely did not. So, Kayleigh, I ask you this. So if, to Harold's point, and I think he's right about this, I think every successive administration is a response to the previous administration. So did President Trump start us down the road of attacking one another, or did that start with President Obama or even before?
I think President Trump is forced into a certain position because of the media's duplicity. When the media goes out there and does what we just played in the last block, makes this a Romeo and Juliet love story, lies about the motive, the only way to change that is the man with the biggest microphone in the world, President Trump, saying exactly what Tyler Robinson's motive was. And that is what he was doing. And good for him for doing it. For Obama, and I'll do this quickly, I know we're short on time, part of the job of the president is to pull people together. Okay. Have you talked to Joe Biden, your vice president, when he said the vaccinated have a right to be angry at the unvaccinated? Half the country should be angry at the other half. Did you talk to him when he said that those who oppose the Georgia voting law were segregationist, half the country segregationist? Did you talk to him when he called MAGA a clear and present danger, a threat to the very foundation of the republic? They do not respect the rule of law and the Constitution. Did you talk to your vice president? Was that pulling the country together? And did you talk to him when your vice president, Joe Biden, called half of the country, MAGA supporters, garbage? Spare me the pull the country together language and tell you, talk to your former vice president because he ripped us apart for 4 years straight.
Yes, he was not exactly a continuation of the Obama presidency. But where do we stand when you've got a former president attacking a current president? Does it make things better?
I'm not that worried about it because, man, is he boring. It's very hard to actually absorb anything Obama's saying. You're just going come on, dude. You could drive a truck through those spaces between words. It's just we get it. You're important, historic, but try to speed it up a bit. He is really the most boring person on the planet. And that says something. I have a rule of thumb, though. When they say it's both sides, it's their fault. Because when it's your fault, they just say it's your fault. You follow me? So every time you hear both sides do it, you know they're culpable. Because when it's our fault, they never say that. They just go, it's your fault. So remember that. Also, I want to go back to what I said before. If you hear a performance artist say that men can get pregnant, you go, what the hell? It's a performance artist. You don't expect that from a Supreme Court justice. That's what I'm talking about. It's the migration of leftist extremism into the mainstream. That is the problem that I think you have to deal with as a moderate, as the sole remaining voice of the Democratic Party. Now, let's just I'm going to buy into this idea that both sides use derogatory language. I think it's true. I think the Democrats are more demonizing. They say you're a threat to democracy. Republicans call you a socialist. But let's just say for the sake of fun, it's equal. There's one thing you have to understand. Republicans are as square as their front lawns. There is research that shows that the right is concerned with law. The left sees law as oppressive. This is why we don't believe in a weak border. This is why we don't believe in getting rid of bail. This is why we think if you steal $900 from, I don't know, TJ Maxx, you should go to jail. That's just in our DNA. So when you think, okay, I'm going to say Brian Kilmeade's a jerk, doesn't mean that I want people to attack him. Because that's not how Republicans and conservatives think, because we rely on law and order to solve our problems. But for some reason, the left has been able to push this idea that violence is how you speak to power. And when you see somebody like Charlie, you realize that's power. Perhaps the most powerful conservative voice in a generation. And they go, violence is acceptable to speak to power. We don't do that. That's why when people say both sides, it's like, I'll give you that even though I disagree, but you got to understand, ours is cauterized. We don't move forward. We don't just go like, I heard Brian say this, I'm going to go beat up the cameraman. That's not how it works with us.
Right. Why did I have to be used twice in a negative way?
I'm trying to plant a seed.
You know, I've had death threats on me. You've had death threats on you. It goes. When I say both sides, I know you weren't directing at me, but I just think we gotta. Look,
but I'm not talking about you.
I'm trying to find answers.
I'm not talking about you.
Okay,
I'm not talking about you at all. And I do agree with you. I do also believe that there's an undercurrent here of grievance that has spread from the left and could envelop the right at some point.
Yes, grievance and grief. It is a lot to grapple with as a country. Up next, think Joe Biden could do this? President Trump dazzles the royals. Stay with.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.